Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is John Farrell. I am a retired chief from the United States Air Force. It's hard to believe that in about 4 months or so, I will be retired from the Air Force 20 years. I will give you a little bit idea of my background to set up and tee up what we're going to talk about today. So my background is when I left the Air Force, I made a conscious decision that I wanted to be an HR professional. So I went out and searched to see exactly what roles were out there. And I was able to secure my first job working for Altria Philip Morris. A lot of you will probably know them by Marlboro cigarettes. And I'm a big time anti-smoker, and they just about killed me, honestly. But I did work there for a number of years as their chief of talent acquisition. Back then, we called it recruiting. So I think I have a lot of information I'm going to be able to share with you to help highlight some of the things that will make you successful in the job search, which is my primary mission today. I moved on from there to work for the Home Depot Corporation in Atlanta as their chief of talent acquisition. And going from a plant environment to a store environment was a little bit different, both blue collar worlds. And then I changed and got into what I would call white collar HR and worked in a lot of different capacities along the spectrum, everything from recruiting to employment relations to benefits and compensation, all those things that would be associated to that program. Then I made a conscious decision to get into a nonprofit, and I became the chief operating officer of the Air Force Aid Society. A lot of you will probably recognize that name if you serve, because we have sister societies that do the same mission over at Navy and Marine Corps Relief, Army Emergency Relief, Coast Guard Mutual Aid Society, the American Red Cross, places like that. So that gives you an idea of exactly what is occurring in my background. What I want to talk to you about is what makes us successful with our personalized service. We are Warriors Ethos, a 501c3. We are founded 13 years ago by an Army sniper. And when he got out, he wanted to say, what can I do to give back to those that served our country? He went on to become an extremely successful businessman. He owns two federal contractors, one called Intelligent Waves and the other Hypori, which are huge in the cybersecurity world. So when I'm done here, we'll talk about how to secure a position there if you're interested. So having said that, let's get into the presentation. So here's what we do. Here's our mission. We are dedicated to providing assistance in your career planning, professional development, placement, which is huge, for three categories of people: veterans, veteran spouses, and wounded warrior caregivers assisting through the transition, which fortunately there's not many wars, so thank God we don't have many people in that position, but that would be those who are in the transition world looking to help their spouse a lot of times, or possibly an E1 through E4 living with mom and dad. For all six branches of service, it makes no difference whether you served 180 days or 30 years. It makes no difference whether you got out last week or got out 20 years ago like me. We are always here to assist. Everything I'm going to talk to you about today is 100% given free. So you notice that one of the things that I have there is the veteran is a huge part of it. And then we'll also talk about the employer network that I have, that I work with, that makes us successful in what we do. It's a three-step process. Engagement first. That's the act of creating meaningful introductions for intentional forces. Also, it serves as a basic way of being receptive to new opportunities. There's a systematic process that we use that is extremely successful, and I'll tell you how successful at the end, which you'll see on how we source candidates. Having said that, the second part is the education piece. This involves sharing info through a lot of different ways. You'll hear about executive mentors. You'll hear about the things that my staff and the two ladies that work for me work with. And we'll talk about how do you take the skills that you learned in the military world and translate into the civilian world. I will tell you that I teach a 2-hour course on interview techniques, resume development. And I teach, I'm in Northern Virginia right now, at Andrews and at Quantico. And you can imagine teaching a Marine is a little bit different than an airman, but we take what you learned in the military and bring it forward to how you can be successful in this job search. And I'll give you some specifics here in a moment. And obviously, how are we successful? Finding you a job. Our current metric is within 60 days from first contact, which means the very first conversation we have, 99.69% are hired. I'll take that any day, if you go to Vegas and you play cards, that's an extremely successful rate. So we're very, very happy with that. How do we do it? Well, first you need to know what's going on. And you probably heard this through some of the other speakers from yesterday. And obviously we just heard it from the dynamic gentleman who just smoked the F-18 pilot. You have to recognize it's a process. You're probably doing the right thing by planning in advance. I am living proof, I will tell you, of not to do what I'm going to share with you. I ended up getting an assignment and I 7-day opted and they said, oh, by the way, you're already on terminal leave. So I didn't have the opportunity to go ahead and experience everything that you have as well. So it's so important to use all the different tools in the toolbox that I'm going to share here with you as we get through the process. So what is it, first of all? It's a collaborative experience between you and employers where you can learn expectations of one another. In a moment, I'm going to answer the question that was posed earlier today when we first began during the introduction. This affords you real-world experiences. It affords you how to translate your skills and all those things associated to corporate America. And obviously, it allows you the opportunity to engage in cultural discussions, both with employers and hiring managers, contacts, people who can get you jobs, which is a big part of this. Now, let's look at the gravity of what we do. Let's look at the numbers. So every 6 months or so, the Bureau of Labor Statistics publish unemployment numbers. So here's what it panned out as of July 31st. And they'll publish some new numbers here December 3rd. The news was generally bad. Fewer jobs were out there. And the national unemployment rate, you notice, was 4.3%. In July, 60K more veterans did get employed, which is a positive thing. And it was both an increase in both the female and male category. So obviously, if there's a solid choice between a veteran and a non-veteran, companies are consistently choosing the veteran. Why? We're used to following orders. We're creative. We're used to problem-solving skills. We're used to getting things done in an efficient and timely manner. Now, you notice the veteran employment rate did creep up to 3%. It was 2.8% in June. And I've consistently pointed out that the statistics are interesting, but less relevant with the number of actual veterans working. So a few more of the numbers here. Here's where we were. So notice the unemployment rate and how many were employed versus unemployed. So you can see if you look at the analysis, I'm a metrics guy, and you look at July and April, you notice the unemployment rate is a lot higher. It's because it's a lot higher because the veterans joined the labor force, which affects the computation. There's a lot of nebulous background numbers of the way they achieve this, and it's too confusing to get into it, but those are accurate numbers. So the bigger question I always say is, since there were 300K fewer veterans working than in January 2024, why is this concerning? There was more than 1 million fewer veterans working than 2019. So what's happened in the 4 years to explain this? Hopefully, anybody who's doing this veteran research will one day be able to offer a fact-based explanation instead of anecdotes. There's a lot of nebulous anecdotal information that I won't bore you with, but you can see the numbers don't lie. In the meantime, you'll notice that we still have a lot of work to do. And what can we do to ensure that veterans are unemployed? Here is the process that I want to share with you exclusively for us. And then I'm going to answer questions for you. So here's how this works. At the end, I'm going to give you my email address. If you are interested in partaking this personalized service, all you do is have to respond to me and say, John, set this in motion. A one word or a couple phrases will set it in motion. So what do we do with you? We work internationally. It makes no difference whether we're working at 0300 or 1900, 400, because we recognize that people in Guam or in Asia are 15 hours ahead, and we have to combat that. So what we do is we do a 1-hour video intake session with you with one of the 2 caseworkers that work for me. And those 2 ladies sit down and say, what do you want to do when you hang up the uniform? What field do you want to pursue? What is the area of expertise that you would want to apply? And yours is pretty easy, cybersecurity. Well, I'm going to share with you that there are a lot of cybersecurity jobs in a lot of different arenas where our folks have been extremely successful. I already shared first thing when I spoke that my owner is a cybersecurity federal contractor. He currently has in one company about $80 million in contracts and another about $120 million in contracts. As a matter of fact, they just won the contract with the Air Force where they can speak on cell phones instead of using radios in a combat zone because they're protected and they have the software engineers that have done that. So what happens is they sit down and they say, all right, we're going to go ahead and do this. And we work both in what I'll call the blue collar and the white collar world. and you go on one of two tracks. This first track, only 1% take advantage of this, and I can understand why. It's normally an E1 through E4 who get out of one branch of the military, and they have absolutely no idea what they want to do. So we pay on our own for them to contract with a life coach to figure it out. The second track, which is the primary one that you would be interested in, is what we call the career track. So if you come to us in one of that interviews and you say, I want to be, regardless of what it is, it could be everything. It's like a firefighter, electrician, a plumber, a cybersecurity engineer, an attorney, an accountant, an HR professional, a project manager. What we do next, and I am so blessed and fortunate that our organization is, I have over 100 executive mentors that are either VPs, chief operating officers, or CEOs of these companies that work with you cradle to grave from the very first conversation until when you subsequently start working for that company because you receive an offer. And what they do is they sit down with you again through the video platforms. We use all of them, honestly. We use Zoom, FaceTime, Teams, WebEx, all of the different platforms, whatever's easier for you and them. They will sit down in that 1 hour video session and mentor you on how to attack the job search, and specifically in the field you want to pursue. So if you're going to be a cybersecurity person, you're going to talk to a cybersecurity expert in the hiring process. They're going to sit there and they're going to talk to you about, here's how you get a job. Now, I am blessed. I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. We have cybersecurity jobs coming out of our ears. We have a lot of Beltway bandits. Now, I know it's hard depending on where you are, especially if you're in Timbuktu in the middle of the Midwest. But I'll still at the end talk to you how to be successful. What happens is they sit down on that. They go through, they talk about interview techniques, resume development, networking skills, all those things that are associated towards doing that. Honestly, I have a gentleman, by the way, I should have mentioned, those executive mentors, here's how sharp they are. 100% of what they do is free out of the kindness of their heart. The only thing that we ask is they live the experience themselves. So when you talk to them, you're talking to a veteran. They left one of the 6 branches of services. They lived the experience. They know what you're going through. They personally experience it. And I have a lot of them that have had that done in the last 3 or 4 years. And then I have some like me 20 years ago. But they will allow you to do that. And by the way, you're allowed to have more than one mentor. Let's say you talk to a cybersecurity engineer from X company and you find, well, yeah, that's really something. But you know what? I would rather go to Cisco, or I would rather go to a federal contractor. How do I attack that? I have on retainer a gentleman who does either the 2-page corporate resume or the 10 to 20-page civil service resume. At the same time, he does what's called a LinkedIn cleansing. 100% free to you, doesn't cost you anything. I'll be real honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. You know, this might sound egotistical, and I'm trying not to be, but I will simply say, as an HR professional who has his certification in human resources, senior certified professional, I thought John Farrell could write a resume. This guy is a magical wizard. His name is, his organization is Landmark, and his name is Craig Travis. Craig works with you, also cradle to grave, and it's not just like a one-brush thing. He'll adjust and adapt to every environment, because at the end, when I talk about how to attack the job search specifically in cybersecurity, I will share with you what he does to make you successful. So he'll have iterations of 3 to 4 to 6 different resumes to attack the job search. The one thing that he does that has really made a difference is the LinkedIn cleansing. So he goes on LinkedIn and he cleans it up and he fixes it for you, because he knows what attracts recruiters. They're looking specifically, in your case, for cybersecurity people. And he'll sit down and do that and build that to make sure that it reflects the keywords, all the necessary certs if you have them, or the things that are there. Follow-up available assistance is there as well. And they are there to assist throughout the process. Again, I told you how successful we are, 99.69%, which is a great stat. And then lastly, I have a lady, I like to play cards. I affectionately refer to as my ace in the hole. Her name is Carrie Greenwood. She worked 30 years for the Veterans Administration, and she was a PEBLO, a Physical Evaluation Board Liaison Officer. And her way of giving back to members is to go ahead and fight the VA to get a higher disability claim percentage. Now, she's not going to cheat. She's not going to lie. But what I will say is she knows where all the bodies are buried. She knows all the nuances of the VA that sometimes some of these, in all due respect to Veteran Services organizations like the American Legion, the VFW, they may not understand it. She lived the experience for 30 years, did claims for 30 years. So she knows better than anyone how to attack the job search and how to use the disability compensation to your benefit. So I'm going to pause for a moment, and I'm going to bring my screen down and see if you have any questions before I proceed. Are there any questions out there before I talk a little bit more about how to succeed as a as a cybersecurity expert? Feel free to type them in. Okay, I'm not seeing any right now, but that's okay. So let's talk about the question that was asked earlier. How do you succeed as a cybersecurity comment? Ryan, thank you for sharing that, right? You're exactly right. That can be a lot of money if you're hiring someone. And you know what? Here's what I find, and you opened something that's near and dear to my heart. I refer to these guys and gals as shysters, as used car salesmen, because what a lot of them will do is they'll promise or make a guarantee that if you pay them a fee, that you'll go ahead and get a higher disability claim percentage. Sometimes they're successful, sometimes they're not. What some of them actually do, are you ready for this? And some of our people really sign up for it. It blows my mind. They will put the contract that they sign with them to make it contingent on the percentage you obtain for them for the rest of their lives. Is that insane? So in other words, let's suppose you went from 50 to 80%. They get 30%. It's crazy. It's illegal, in my opinion. So why pay for something that we do free? And I know later today, Tom's going to share with you how to be successful anyway, since he's dealt with that a lot as well. This lady can work wonders, so I highly encourage you to do that. The same thing, I know a lot of people that pay a lot of money out of pocket to do resumes and all the other things that I mentioned that Craig does free for you. So please, thank you for, there you go, for the resume piece. Don't do that. He charges us a set fee. That's not gratis, but we're blessed to be able to pay that. And the experiences that he has with success is amazing. So let's talk about how do you become successful as a cybersecurity person and how to attack it. All right, here's why I believe you can be successful. And I am taking this now, not as the executive director, but more of a recruiting guy who did it for years when I left the military. You must specifically target the areas that you're looking for. I heard some of this with our dynamic speaker of the F-18 pilot a little while ago, where he said he did numerous networking phone calls. And I will admit, that can be hard and it can be trying. But I will tell you, John Farrell has had 4 jobs in the 20 years that he hung up the uniform. All 4 of them was not because of the resume that I submitted somewhere, but because I had a network partner that helped me that said, hey, here's John Farrell's resume. Give this guy a shot. Have a conversation with him. At least do an informal interview and open the door for that. What I find with our executive mentors, they put a lot of stock in how successful you become. Let's say it. Let's just face it. There's never a better feeling in life than knowing that you made a difference for someone, right? I put a lot of pride and stock in us taking care of us, our critiques and our success rate. I do that. What will Craig do, the resume writer with you? He will take your cybersecurity resume and specifically target it towards those firms that are hiring whatever part of cybersecurity you want to get to. Tom said it well earlier in the conversation when he was talking about, it depends what role you want to go. He can target it specifically for that. We've had major success because here's how this thing works. I think most of you know this, but I'll share it with you. So when I was working for the one organization, most of the jobs that I was hiring was 100 to 250K, which is good money. It was not uncommon for me to receive 1,500 or 2,000 resumes posted to that job. Do you think I have time to look at 1,500, 2,000 resumes? You know how long the average recruiter looks at your resume? 15 seconds. 15 seconds. So they use what I affectionately refer to as a lottery machine. In the industry, it's known as an applicant tracking system. They go to the hiring manager and say, hey, hiring manager, can you do me a favor and give me 5 to 15 keywords that I can put into the machine, and it will kick out the top whatever number of resumes they want. So let me give you a perfect example. I was hiring for an organization that the salary was 250K, and it was posted 250K, so that we didn't have to worry about the playing around situation. So I got 2,500 people apply to that job. They came to me and they said, here's what I want. They only wanted 25 resumes. I spit that in, the top 25 came out, and that's what the hiring manager looked at. So in other words, out of those 2,500, 2,475 went into the black hole of the applicant tracking system. So what Craig will do for you is he will work this and specifically target those cybersecurity experiences that you want to pursue. Like I said, our owner owns 2 cybersecurity companies. By the way, if you want to research them, one is called Intelligent Waves and the other is Hypori, Hypori. His name is Jared Shepard, if you want to look him up. Jared puts a lot of pride in taking care of cybersecurity people. So they have a lot of 100% remote roles where you can work anywhere in the world, and they have vacancies all the time. And we have veterans preference hiring, obviously, since we live the experience. So I would suggest you look into that. Interview techniques. A big part of what I share with people is do your homework. What I would do when I would purposely research a company that I wanted to target, I would look at their website. I would know their mission statement. I would know their core values. I would know all the things that make that company tick. And when it came time for the interview, which a lot of days are done with panel interviews, and they turn the tables and say, John, would you like to ask any questions? I would specifically ask questions that would weave all that stuff that I learned to them. And they immediately drew the inference, man, this dude did a lot of research here. He knew that our company. So what did it do? It showed that I was energetic. I was enthusiastic. I was due diligent. I did all the things it should take to be hired for a company. And I was successful in each of those circumstances. So let me close with the question that I always tell people to ask in every single interview they do. And there's a little bravado to this question. I will preface it. You might snicker when I say it, but I will tell you how successful it is. The question is this, and I'll paraphrase it. Now that we have talked about my education experience and qualifications, do you have any concerns I can attempt to alleviate in order to become your number one candidate? Now, I will admit there's some bravado to that, isn't it? Let me say it again. Now that we looked at your education, experience, qualifications, is there any concerns about me that I can attempt to alleviate in order to become your number one candidate? Now, invariably what will happen is the panel will smile. But I will tell you, this happened to me, that very first job that I told you about. But incidentally, I'm not trying to brag, but it proves the point. That job was a 2K job, my first job out of the Air Force in 2005, which was a lot of money, the most money I ever. Sure was better than E9 pay, right? But here's the question I asked. It was that question. And this lady looked across, and she, during the entire interview, I could tell she was very stern. She didn't smile. She looked around. She looked mean and angry, right? So she raised her hand and goes, yes, sir, I have a question. Yes, ma'am, what is your question? And she was honest. She goes, I am concerned about your military experience. So I could have taken that a lot of ways. I could have taken it and been pissed off. So I kind of paused and I said, all right, let's make sure that I ask her a question that doesn't insult her intelligence. I said, ma'am, do you mind if I ask you a question? Sure. Why would you ask that? Is it fair to say that you've never had anybody from your family serve the military? Absolutely not. None of them served the military. Actually, kind of curt, she said it. Then I said, so is it fair to say that all the impressions that you have of military people is by what you've seen in television and movies? And she admitted it was. So I said, ma'am, rest assured, I'm not going to be barking orders, saying drop and give me 50 push-ups to the employees that work for me. What happened? To make a long story short, I was hired in that job. She's now in her 80s. She's like my grandmother. We still talk all the time and establish a fantastic relationship. So my point, everybody, is relationships is anything. Here's my contact data. Okay. I'm going to type it down here for you. There's our website. There's my contact data. Please reach out to me. I'll gladly help you in the job search. I thank you very much for the time today, everybody. I wish you the very best. If we can help you, please reach out. That's why we're here. You have yourself a good day. Take care.